The facts, chronology, and revelations of the Lewiston Commission and U.S. Army investigations are fueling calls for accountability and reform. One path leads to the courtroom, the other to Congress. Phil Hirschkorn continues our reporting.
This could have and should have been prevented.
When the Lewiston Commission completed its work, lawyers representing families of the victims and survivors of the mass shooting were ready.
The next step in this process needs to be real accountability, and that's where we come in.
Attorneys Travis Brennan and Ben Gideon represent some 100 plaintiffs, relatives of those killed, those wounded by gunfire, and other survivors who experienced trauma, all prepared to sue whoever can be held accountable for mishandling Robert Card.
We should not have members or former members of our military with severe mental health issues that are paranoid, delusional, and lack impulse control walking around with AR-10s and AR-15s. Just should never happen.
Our clients, at the end of the day, they want to understand, as painful as it is, how and why this could have happened. Because if you don't understand how and why this happened here, there's no hope for fixing this. There's no hope for preventing this from happening in the future.
Their planned lawsuit echoes the sentiments of many family members who testified at the Commission's public hearings.
My name is Kathleen Walker.
Kathleen Walker was bowling at Just in Time Recreation with her husband of 27 years, Jason, last October 25th, sharing a lane with Jason's best friend since childhood, Mike Delorier, and Mike's partner, Stacy Sear.
As soon as Robert Card fired his first fatal shot, Jason yelled to me to get down, and his first instinct was to keep me safe.
Card would fire 18 shots in the bowling alley. In one moment, his rifle jammed, and Jason and Mike charged at Card.
Jason worked at trying to kick the gun away as Mike came up on him from behind. In the end, the gun was no longer jammed.
Card shot Jason and Mike multiple times, and they both died. Both were just 51 years old. Grief turned to anger as they learned how the Saginaw County Sheriff's Department did not try to confiscate Card's guns under Maine's yellow flag law, despite having been told by his family and his Army Reserve unit about his mental decline and dangerous delusions. They also learned how those Army Reserve members, many of whom were Maine cops, did not check on Card or his medical treatment after his release from a mandated mental hospital stay.
There were several opportunities to take firearms away from a known mentally unstable man. It should never have taken Mike and my husband to be the first to approach him to disarm him. Everyone was so scared of this man snapping that no one took action. And the system failed, and we can't allow this to happen again.
They want accountability, they want answers, and they want fair and just compensation for what happened to them.
Brennan and Gideon and their legal team have formally given notice to the Army under the Federal Tort Claims Act about the lawsuit. It will identify as a key mistake the Army and its mental hospitals sending Card home in August 2023 after 19 days as an inpatient.
They did know that he was delusional, paranoid, and also he told them he had a hit list.
He had a hit list, and they found that he lacked impulse control. And they said if he became emotional again in the future, there's no telling what he would do.
The lawyers say another mistake was the lack of follow-up care. Card skipped appointments and did not respond to phone calls and emails from Army or hospital medical staff or his reserve unit leaders.
One of the troubling and puzzling facts related to this case is the fact that on the one hand, the military said, Mr. Card is too dangerous to have access to firearms and dangerous weapons while he's on the military base. Yet we're going to send him back into the community and basically wash our hands or take no role in ensuring that the community is protected.
The Lewiston lawyers are focused not only on what the Army did or did not do after its hospitals treated Robert Card, but whether his 20 years of service in the military might have contributed to his mental decline. Though never deployed to combat, Card did work for years as a grenade instructor and was exposed to thousands of explosions. An autopsy of Card's brain, commissioned by his family and conducted at Boston University, found traumatic brain injury. Card's brain is now being studied at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center outside Washington.
It relates to Robert Card's repeated exposure to blasts over the years and the role that may have played in his precipitous decline in his mental health.
You know, a reasonably good guy who was quiet and he was stable and he was a dependable member of his reserve unit. Well, why did all of that change all of a sudden? Nobody ever bothered to answer that question. And one of the answers could be because he had a brain injury caused by his exposure to concussive forces while he was in the Army.
That's one reason the lawyers went to Saginaw County Probate Court earlier this month, seeking Card's medical and Army personnel records. The lawyers were successful in asking a judge to appoint one of their clients, Cynthia Young, as a special administrator who can access those records. At the bowling alley, Young lost her 44-year-old husband, Bill, and their 14-year-old son, Aaron, the massacre's youngest fatality.
This is going to be really beneficial towards the healing of all the families, the victims, the survivors, and I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to move forward.
Because it's a critical piece of the puzzle, and without that information, there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Beyond accountability lies reform. Maine U.S. Senator Susan Collins is proposing the Crisis Intervention Act to close gaps in communication between the military and law enforcement.
Where there is a serious threat that led the military to take away weapons or an involuntary hospitalization, those facts would have to be communicated. In those cases, there would be an affirmative requirement that the military service report all the information that it has related to the service member to state, local, or county law enforcement. And subsequently, the branch of the military would have to cooperate with any judicial proceeding that results, such as a yellow flag law in the state of Maine or a red flag law in New York State.
Maine U.S. Senator Angus King is her co-sponsor.
Here's what it is. It says, Army, if you see something, say something. And it's just a question of notification to insist that the Army make those, or the military, make the notification clearly and unequivocally to the states so they can then take some action to protect their citizens and to protect this person who may be suicidal.
A second Collins and King proposal, the Blast Over Pressure Safety Act, would address the impact of training and battlefield explosions.
What we want to do in this bill is to do a baseline assessment of people who are in the military, of their brains. And then if they are exposed to very loud blasts repeatedly, we want to keep monitoring them and doing assessments to make sure that they do not have brain injuries from it.
Screen everybody coming in for their brain situation. It's just like high school football players have a baseline concussion protocol. Everybody has to be screened in advance. Secondly, test annually. It's telling the Army, frankly, to do stuff they ought to be doing anyway.
It may surprise you that no one in Maine law enforcement is expected to be a named defendant in the lawsuit. That's because state law provides broad immunity to government employees when they are doing their job. On Election Day, Saginaw County residents will vote for sheriff. There are only two candidates on the ballot, Deputy Aaron Schofield and incumbent Sheriff Joel Murray. From zero on October 25th, the office has now used Maine's yellow flag law to confiscate weapons 20 times.
I feel bad for what had happened. I wished I had the opportunity to do something different. I didn't want those people to get hurt and killed. I'm sorry for what happened to their families. I wish things had been done differently.
It's painful. The state hurts for what happened at the tragedy there, and I pray to God that nothing like that ever happens again. My perspective is, how do we fix this? How do we make this so that it never happens again? You know, and if there are things that were done wrong, let's fix them.
On October 25th, Danielle Jasper and her husband, John, were at Schmenge's Bar and Grill to play cornhole with friends. John was shot and survived. Danielle was traumatized.
My life has now forever been changed. I don't feel safe. If I walk into a restaurant or a business, I look for places I can hide or ways I can get out.
But Jasper also had a message for the members of multiple agencies who she feels let CARD slip through the cracks.
When you sign up to protect and serve your town, your state, or your country, you sign up to do uncomfortable things. So when there is someone who is a danger to themselves or to the community, do the uncomfortable task and protect us.
I think we're all still sort of numb from what happened to the victims and to the survivors and the family members that were associated with them, that we can't imagine what they went through, and I'm sure that they're going to go through it again as the anniversary of this rolls around, and will for the rest of their lives be living with this tragedy.
That concludes our special documentary, Lewiston, What Went Wrong. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.